on when you plan on speaking. For those participating on Zoom, when you do speak, state your name before making your comment or when asking a question. We'll go ahead and begin the meeting. If staff would go ahead and call roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the Transportation Policy Committee. Please unmute and indicate if you're present. Mayor Anderson.
Here.
Thank you. Jay Bieber. Mayor Borowski. Councilmember Butler.
Present.
Thank you. Mayor Hermosillo.
Present.
Thank you. Doug DeCluson.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Edwards.
Present.
Thank you. Mayor Freeman. Vice Chair Gallego.
Here.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Garland.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Haney. Spencer Camps. Supervisor Lesko. Councilmember Manfredi. Thank you. Kevin McCarthy.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Osborne.
Present.
Thank you. Tyler Pace. Mayor Pizzillo.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Poston.
Here.
Thank you. Mark Reardon. Jack Sellers.
Present.
Thank you. Amashim.
Present.
Thank you. Chair Wires.
I'm here.
Thank you. Mayor Wheatley.
Present.
Thank you. Councilmember White.
Present.
Thank you. Mayor Wilson. Is there anyone that I missed? Councilmember Haney? He didn't answer. Thank you, Chair. We have quorum.
Thank you very much. Would everybody please join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, next is the call of the audience. Have we got any speaker cards filled out?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We do not have any comments.
Okay, while I got you there, do we have any speaker cards for anybody on anything?
Actually, Mr. Chair, we do not.
Okay. Next item, Meg will make this opportunity available to members of the public if you have submitted written comments and you have none of those also, correct?
Correct.
Okay, very good. All right, well, let's go ahead and move on to item number 4A through 4B. They're for information only today. Any member on the committee have any questions or request a presentation on any of the items? Seeing none. Next on the agenda is item 5, approval consent for the agenda.
So moved. Gallego.
Second. White.
I have a motion. I have a second on item number 5. I guess we're supposed to go ahead and take a vote on this. Yeah, okay. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Okay, appears you guys do have it. And so
I think we have to check a couple folks perhaps.
that's what I was waiting for.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mayor Wheatley, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilmember Haney, how do you vote? Doug DeCluson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor, the motion passes.
Very good, thank you. Okay, approval consent agenda items 5A through 5C. Any member of the committee have any questions or request presentation separately on any of these items?
I think we just covered those. That was just your motion.
5A and 5C is
Yep.
what we,
You just got
Okay,
those.
all right.
You just got those approved.
okay. Well, we have none of those. What's that? All right, well,
We got to catch up to you, Mr. Chair. Sorry about that.
okay. Yeah, this is okay. Update on 2026 Proposition 479 Arterial Life Cycle Program. Items on the agenda for action and will be presented by Mr. Stone, Deputy Transportation Director for Programming. Sure.
Thank you, Chair Wires, members of the Transportation Policy Committee. Pleasure today to be here to present this item, which, as the chair noted, is an update to the Proposition 479 Arterial Life Cycle Program. So what is the Arterial Life Cycle Program? It's the arterial streets component of the Regional Strategic Transportation Infrastructure Investment Plan, or RSTIP. And the administration and maintenance of the ALCP is guided by the policies approved by Regional Council earlier this year in March. Key elements of the Arterial Life Cycle Program, and really one of the key tenets, is as required by statute, the program must remain fiscally constrained. The Proposition 479 ALCP is entirely funded by the half-cent sales tax. It is a reimbursement-based program in that member agencies expend their costs and then seek reimbursement through MAG. All of the reimbursements in the program are expressed in 2025 constant dollars. And as noted, the ALCP was approved by Regional Council a few months ago in June. So why are we here with a mid-year adjustment? We just approved the program back in June. When we did bring that through the committee process in June, we did note we would come back with a mid-year adjustment. There's really a couple of reasons. First, the original listing of projects included in the ALCP were actually developed by your staff and your agencies back in 2019, which of course was pre-pandemic. We did not know the impacts of COVID at that point in time. And because of that, and with other shifts in development, it necessitated allowing member agencies to propose adjustments to projects. So this is the opportunity for agencies to come back and say, while we had this project in the ALCP, we now have a greater need within our community. And as noted on the prior slide, all of the adjustments must be revenue neutral, both at a programmatic, agency, and fiscal year level. How we do this is we really do utilize a tool called the Project Change Tool. This tool was made available to member agencies after Regional Council on June 26th. We had 3 agencies submit 10 project change requests by the deadline of July 15th. And those requests were actually presented at Street Committee last month on approval, pushing them through the committee process now today to TPC. So the Project Change Tool, it really allows member agencies to tell the story. They summarize the project they already have in the LCP and what they intend to propose, looking at both funding and cost estimates. We have a tool, an actual Excel tool that member agencies use to complete this process. And as noted prior, they presented this at Street Committee and outlined the reason for the changes and presented the results of the tool. Tool itself, it's a evaluative criteria. There are 11 quantitative and 3 qualitative criteria. I won't go through them all in the screen. I will note, though, that the 11 quantitative criteria actually mimic the criteria we used to originally program those projects in the RSTIP and in the ALCP. And then the qualitative kind of allow member agencies to tell the rest of that story. Going through the change requests, the first request comes from the city of Goodyear. They had 2 projects on Yuma Road that they were looking to originally have in the ALCP. They've now moved forward and said they would like to remove those projects from the ALCP and substitute them with a greater need for a project along Estrella Parkway, specifically going from MC 85 to Vineyard Avenue. Again, putting in a roadway widening project at the bottom right of the screen. These are the results of the Project Change Tool. We actually present this at Street Committee and allow member agencies to review that. City of Peoria had a request as well. Again, 2 projects existing in the current ALCP, one on Thunderbird and another on 107th. The city asked to then modify those requests. And what they really wanted to do, they have an unusual project for El Mirage Road. This is a project that is actually in both the Prop 400 ALCP and the Prop 479 ALCP. It's a major new roadway and roadway widening project coming off the 303 at El Mirage Road and extending north up to Jomax. The city has had additional needs there, and so they requested this substitution. Again, we have the project change request results. Finally, I have 2 requests for the city of Surprise. First request was originally a project on 163rd Avenue. Based on a study done by ADOT, you'll hear Mr. Williams come up in a little bit talking about a corridor study along US 60, identification that there was a greater need in this area. And specifically, they want to bring in the 155th Avenue project. This ties in well to the new TI project that will be done on 155th, approved as part of the most recent freeway lifecycle program. Again, at the bottom, the project change request tool evaluation. And then the final project, again, for the city of Surprise. This was a project on Waddell from 175th to Cotton. And similar to the previous project with 155th, because of some studies and working with ADOT, it was identified that there was actually a need for another project location over there, specifically on Pinnacle Peak Road, going from 163rd to 155th, which actually ties into the previous project. And as noted here, again, the tool results. And with that, Chair Wires, members of the TPC, that concludes my presentation. Be happy to take any questions you may have. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Questions? Seeing none. We have, again, no speaker cards, correct?
That is correct, sir.
All right, thank you.
I move we accept the recommended approval of the project's change for FY 2026 proposed 479 arterial life cycle program contingent on findings of air quality conformity.
Okay, we have a motion, Ms. White, second from Mr. Osborne. Any discussion? Hearing none. So could I get a voice vote for all in the room and those online? I guess we need everybody, if you're speaking, we need you to turn your cameras on so we know you're there. With that, all in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, vote nay. Okay, do you have what
Mayor-
you need?
Mayor Wheatley, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Borowski, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, motion passes.
Okay, it sounded like a unanimous vote. With that, that passes. Item number 7. Update on the development of Proposition 479 Life Cycle, Transit Life Cycle Program. So I'm gonna try this. So if I mess up, I want you to correct me, okay? Armita, did I say that right?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's Arminta, but I made up that pronunciation, so your pronunciation could be correct. So maybe.
Well, I'm not gonna call you Bob, so.
That's a diplomat.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of Transportation Policy Committee. Following a similar theme to the last presentation, I'm here today to provide an update on the development efforts of the Proposition 479 Transit Lifecycle Program. This will be the third in the series of presentations intended to give you just a status update on where things are at in the development of the Prop 479 TLCP. And so when we're talking about the Prop 479 TLCP, just a quick reminder before we get into the update itself, this is the management tool for those transit investments that are included in the RSTIP that are partially funded through Proposition 479. That will be managed by MAG, but implemented by Valley Metro and local agencies. And when it comes to moving from Proposition 400 to Proposition 479, the Transit Lifecycle Program has the largest funding policy shifts of the 3 lifecycle programs. Really, the funding framework is moving from a fixed funding allocation under Proposition 400 to more of a performance-based framework under Proposition 479. And as I mentioned, MAG will be managing the 479 TLCP, while Valley Metro will continue to be responsible for management of the Prop 400 TLCP. And this is particularly a little bit confusing because even though Proposition 400 is set to sunset in just a couple of months, after which Proposition 479 collections will begin, Proposition 400 is projected to end with a fund balance. Now, that fund balance will continue to be drawn down as spent as per the approved policies by the Valley Metro Board of Directors, but that will overlap with the collections for 479 beginning and which will be spent as per the policies that we're discussing here today. So everything we're discussing here today only pertains to the collections under 479. It does not pertain to any of the expenditures that would be funded through Proposition 400 or that projected ending fund balance. And speaking of Proposition 479, here are the different components or expenditure types, transit expenditure types that are eligible under the 479 Transit Lifecycle Program. The top two components are funding set aside for transit operations, whether it's local fixed route service under the bus operating assistance, or ADA or express service under regional services, as well as transit capital elements under the two components shown at the bottom of this screen. So that would be bus capital elements, fleet purchases, transit asset management, as well as high capacity transit projects. So next I'll get into where we stand with development of the program today. So our focus has really been on completing the development of the transit operations elements. So as I mentioned, it's those top two, the bus operating assistance, as well as the regional services, specifically looking ahead at fiscal 27, knowing that this information is critical for your staff as they look ahead in budget development for fiscal 2027. So when it comes to transit operations, the only regional funding source available for operations is sales tax. And so here are all the different operations that are funded regionally. The first four are cost commitments. So we have to ensure that we've set aside enough of the sales tax collections to cover each of these four commitments. And then the remaining balance that's left is then set aside for the formula funding. And then that gets allocated out to agencies according to that performance-based framework to be used with the base allocation for fixed route expenditures. So when it comes to the four cost commitments, 3 of those 4 have been completed. And the last item that's remaining is the update of the regionally funded ADA service, which we're working closely with Valley Metro right now to finalize. Expect to have that done by the end of this month. And then that will also let us know what the balance of funding remaining is, and then that will flow into the amount of formula funding available. So that's a current status of where things are at with development. Before I wrap up today, I do want to spend a little bit of time talking about some of the development work that's gone into updating the regionally funded express bus service. When I last gave an update to this body in June, we focused a lot on the development of the bus operating assistance component. The next element that we focused on since is development of the regionally funded express bus service. So want to give you a little bit of background on all that's gone into that. And this is extremely important because the way the funding is going to be allocated to this service is a departure from how it's been funded under Prop 400. Previously under Prop 400, funding for express service came out of a local jurisdiction's regionally fixed commitment, or it came out of their local funding. But express service is a type of service that's geared towards commuters, typically traveling to work over longer distances, crossing multiple jurisdictions. And so it really is a regional service in nature. It needs to be looked at from that regional network perspective for it to function the way it's intended. And because of how it was structured previously, it was very difficult to look at it from that perspective. And it was very difficult to implement changes looking at it from that perspective. But now with the new structure under 479, we are able to do that. An express service is a particularly important investment for our region just because of all the growth we're experiencing now and will be experiencing into the future. What you can see here is a map of forecasted traffic volumes on our freeway network in 2050. The dark red lines represent traffic volumes, average daily traffic volumes, upwards of about 300,000 in 2050. And so when we look at 2050 and we think about improving mobility, roadway capacity improvements alone will not significantly improve mobility. They need to be completed in combination with other modal options. And I say that because we not only are there going to be constraints from right-of-way access and a number of other things, there are also going to be funding constraints. And so when it comes to investing the limited funding that we have into our transportation network, we need to ensure that we're investing it efficiently, and Express Service is a fantastic tool to be able to do that. As I had mentioned, Express is typically geared towards commuters. In our region, it has historically been service that's gone from the outskirts of the valley and then brought residents who are commuting to downtown Phoenix. And so previous surveys of those residents commuting into downtown Phoenix, while a few of them have taken those express service routes, the majority of them, based on surveys, have typically traveled to work in single occupancy vehicles. So when we look at the number of cars on our roadway in 2050, if instead a number of those vehicles were off the road and instead a number of those people were traveling using express service instead, that would improve mobility for not just those folks commuting to work, but also the rest of the cars traveling along that corridor. And then it would also improve what is the worst travel times of the day along our freeway network, peak period travel times. But for the express service network to function the way it needs to within our transportation network, what we have to do is make sure that the service that's on the street is meeting the demand for express service. And the way to do that is to make sure that we are serving what our region's market for express service is. And so that's really the work that's been going on behind the scenes as we set up for regionally funded express service. Step one, look at what the current market conditions are, the current express service, how that's performing. What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? How can we improve on that? Secondly, are there future potential travel markets that we can grow our express network to serve? And then third, we did some scenario assessments to essentially test those assumptions, validate that, yes, those are potential markets that we should be serving to. So when we look at current market conditions, here's what we saw. Following 2019 to 2020, when COVID hit, it was a dramatic decline across all express service ridership, upwards of 90%. To be expected, there was a shutdown in everything. And again, it was very much geared towards people traveling to work. Since then, 2024, we've seen ridership go back up, but unfortunately, it's still only at about 27.5% of what it originally was pre-COVID. So what's working and what's not working? To dive a little bit deeper into some of the summary results of the current market, first of all, we've seen this across all of our travel patterns, not just express service, but what we're seeing is the middle of the work week is when you have the highest activity. And that is likely due to hybrid work schedules following COVID with perhaps not as many people having to travel into a physical location on Mondays or Fridays. Secondly, we saw that 4 rapid routes out of roughly 20 or so express routes that are out there account for half of the current boardings. Those are the rapid routes all serve within the city of Phoenix, and they go to downtown Phoenix. But when you look at boardings per trip, there are 2 different routes more in Mesa that are actually more productive. So these are the fuller buses. So we wanted to see what's working for those buses that, you know, we could improve on for the other routes. So if you look at the amount of daily trips offered on each of those routes, you'll see a correlation between those 4 highest performing routes and the amount of trips offered. You'll see that they're much higher than the rest of the daily trips offered. If you think about the types of riders who are taking express service in our region, they're typically what we call choice riders, meaning they're not taking express service out of economic necessity. They're more so taking express service because they're choosing to. We know this because typically those who are willing to travel further to go into work are working higher income jobs. They typically drive into a park and ride center, and then they take express service from there. So they do own a vehicle. So the more trips you can offer, the more likely those riders who are choosing to take express service because they want to are more likely to actually take it. On the other hand, those routes that are more productive on a per trip basis, but not on a total basis, what you can see here is they offer a decent amount of daily trips, 6 daily trips a day, but they're not on the high end. And so perhaps that's somewhere we look to increase the frequency of trips because there seems to be a demand there. So those are the kinds of takeaways from the current market evaluation that we'd like to set up the framework for regionally funded express service. And then building on that, looking into the second piece, the travel market assessment. In addition to increased frequency in service, there are some additional characteristics that influence riders to take express service. And then between now and into the future, those characteristics will shift as well, as I mentioned, with congestion increasing and then perhaps travel times on express becoming more competitive when compared to travel times of other modes. And so these are some of the other factors we looked at in putting together potential markets for future express service. So trip activity being those major trip attractions, whether they're new employment centers or even just retail activity with new flexible work schedules. There's more activity outside of just people traveling long distances between just certain periods of the day for work, or you look at students with their flexible school schedule. So that is more of a all-day thing than just within a certain time frame. Again, looking at current performance to understand what's working now versus what's not. And then there are a few other things like density. For example, if you are taking express service into work and it's really hard for you once you get to the final stop to then get to your ultimate location, you're probably more likely to drive to work, especially if you're choosing to take a bus instead of driving. So density is a really important factor in providing what we call that last mile connection, making it very accessible to just very easy to get to work And then finally, as I had mentioned, just being more competitive in terms of travel times when compared to other travel modes. And then here are the categories of the scenario assessments that we put together as part of this effort. So highlighting some of those top performing, or by top performing, those corridors that have the highest demand. Also highlighting some new markets or activity centers other than just downtown Phoenix. And then also looking at if there's demand for just freeway to freeway connections, not necessarily ending in a certain location or major employment center, but looking at if there's enough potential ridership to just have express service stay along freeways. And what we found was that there was demand for all of those. So the top performing corridor segments actually aligned with those freeway corridors in 2050 that had the highest volumes. Makes sense. That's where the most trip activity is happening. So that would be I-17, 10 West, Loop 202, as well as US 60. We also found that there would be demand for new regional destinations. So, for example, downtown Tempe, in addition to downtown Phoenix, was a big one. We also found that freeway to freeway connections would perform well, specifically if there was overlap on major regional destinations, something like the SkyTrain or Deck Park Tunnel, where it's a major hub that a lot of different routes could connect to for service that doesn't make stops off the freeway. And then here's just another example of that, connecting I-10 in the West Valley all the way to US 60 in the East Valley. So in terms of the funding, what are next steps? So none of the maps or ideas or anything that I've shared so far are actual recommendations. Rather, they're a framework. They're scenarios that show that there are new potential markets out there that will ultimately go over to Valley Metro, who will incorporate this as part of their bus network redesign effort that was formerly known as their comprehensive operations analysis. And as part of that effort, they'll be developing specific route recommendations, phasing, and an actual implementation plan. But before any of that gets implemented, it'll again come back before this body for ultimate approval. And then in the meanwhile, from a funding perspective, we've set aside enough funding to maintain existing service levels. And then at the same time, as we wait for Valley Metro to work through developing that implementation plan, we'll also be considering changes to maximize resources. And so I'd like to walk you through an example of what I mean by that. So say you have 3 existing routes. You can see this example table that I've shown on here. In total, that's about 10 trips, and say annually it costs us about 1.2 million. Say these are 3 separate routes all along I-10 West. One goes to Goodyear, the next one goes to Avondale, and then the very last one goes to Buckeye. Instead, you can consolidate all of those into one route, and you'll have altogether less trips. It'll be 7 instead of 10, and it'll be altogether less mileage and less money. But what you will see is that on that specific route, you'll be able to increase the frequency of trips because we were able to realize cost savings with the consolidation. So even though there will be additional stops potentially along that consolidated route, perhaps instead of offering 3 or 4 trips during the peak period, you can offer 4 trips, 5 trips, 6 trips, and gain additional riders through that, while at the same time still realizing cost savings. So that's the intent of the near-term funding strategy. And then just quickly looking ahead at the overall development. So as I had mentioned, there are a couple of estimates that we're working right now to finalize. Expect to have that done at the end of this month. Next month in November, we expect to coordinate with the TLCP working group that's made up of representatives from your staff. We'll be discussing those preliminary updated estimates then, talking through some remaining process details, such as the process and some outstanding policy elements related to implementation of the performance-based formula component. Following discussions with the working group early next year, similar to all the past updates, we'll be coming back to this body to provide updates that were discussed with the working group until ultimately in spring of next year, we look to request approval of the fiscal 27 TLCP. And that completes my presentation today, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions?
Thank you, Chair. Every time I wrote down a question, you answered it almost immediately after. So I really appreciate it. What a great presentation and the thoughtful approach that we're taking to figuring out transportation moving forward, especially the express buses. And I thought it was interesting that after COVID, all of the decrease that we've seen in express, or actually in transit riding in general, but our freeways have not gotten less congested. So there's certainly a larger need to offset that congestion that we're seeing by making it maybe more exciting or more beneficial, or just a more pleasurable experience riding in on transit. I think it is incredibly important. It is great that you're looking at that. So the additional routes, I was thinking of that from myself, and just a practical matter. If I was commuting into downtown Phoenix, I think from Buckeye, there's one, maybe two in the morning, and then one, maybe two in the evening coming back. And if for some reason I've got to come home midday, or I have to stay at the office late or something like that, you're stuck. And so I think maybe for not a lot more cost, we would see a significant increase in ridership moving forward. And then that added distance too, figuring out where folks are going to, if we're commuting in from wherever, say it's Anthem into Central Station in Phoenix, maybe most of those people are not going there. A little additional route to Tempe or to Biltmore or something like that would be would just add a significantly more useful express bus experience. And then I don't know how, we've talked about this a long time ago at Valley Metro. I don't know how I know we've made some changes to express bus where it's not just old school grandma and grandpa's bus that comes in that is not as comfortable, and that's changed to more of that the cross country bus. I don't know what the technical term is for those, but the much nicer reclining seats and everything else, a greater experience. And it's figuring out what those key things are that if we're operating this like a business, or if Valley Metro is operating like a business, how are we going to get people on the bus to make it as successful as we possibly can? And it's not just creating a route and sticking it out there and saying it'll take you from our park and ride in Buckeye or Avondale to this location here, and then y'all figure it out on yourself after that. It's really getting creative marketing in the granular detail that you guys are working through to determine what would create that ultimate bus experience moving in, so that we get more and more people making that choice for express bus options coming in. So really just more me pontificating. It's not, there wasn't any question there, but I really, really appreciate the approach that MAG has taken in talking about what that future of transit looks like here in the Metro Phoenix area. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chair. Thank you, Arminta. I appreciate the presentation. I'm not in a position to answer questions on behalf of Valley Metro, but I am the vice chair, and I'd have to say I have been on one of those express buses, and our CEO, Jessica Metford Miller, will be making herself available if anybody wants to check those out. They're very comfortable, more like the tour bus that you might see a rock star get on after they get off the plane to kind of go to their concert location, not a sleeper type bus. Very, very nice, upgraded. And so the Avondale Transit Center is one of those locations that you're going to see a lot of high volume. We do stop at Goodyear as well. And so when I think about that, that's really important, and we're really grateful for that service. I think when we take a look at the projects and how you are planning to streamline them, and if you could go back just a couple of slides, because I want to make sure that's it. That was the slide, the full workout of that. I think when we look at the ultimate benefit with the near-term strategy, it's going to be a great conversation to find those efficiencies. I think that when we boil it down, we might save more money. I mean, it would be great if we could realize a savings of, $250,000, and people will say that. But I think what we want to do is continue to meet some of the targets that we might have seen on the consent agenda and 5C, those items where we're ensuring safety, we're ensuring security, no risk there. We all agree with that. That's why it wasn't a discussion. But I think then we'll be able to convince the public, because expenses are going up. People are not choosing to drive. We're seeing a whole new generation of commuters that want autonomous vehicles. They want to be chauffeured around. And what better way to do it than on public transit? So I appreciate the stewardship. I would like to, I like SMART goals. So even as we look at those things that we had in some consent items, as we look at this and balance it, MAG is an awesome steward. But I would challenge us to set a little bit of a higher goal and then get more people onto these really nice assets that we have in our infrastructure portfolio so that they can realize these benefits of public transit. Thank you.
Is that it? All right, Armanta Syed. Or Bob. Okay.
I like Bob.
All right, no votes required on this one, so we'll move on to item number 8. Item number 8 is on the agenda for information and discussion. It's going to be presented by Bradley Williams, Principal Transportation Planner. Bradley?
Thank you, Chair Wires and members of the committee.
They barely hear you.
Is this better? Can you hear me? Okay.
I can hear you.
All right. Thank you, Chair Wires and members of the committee, for the opportunity to be here. For most of you, this is going to be an introduction to a study that's been going on a bit over a year, and that's the study of the US 60 Grand Avenue corridor between Loop 303 and State Route 74. Loop 303 and State Route 74. This study area is about 20 miles northwest of downtown Phoenix, and you'll see the study area is very wide. The reason it's so wide is there's not much road infrastructure in this area today. So if we're going to be looking at how US 60 functions in the future, we need to get an idea of how the street system is going to be evolving during that time. So it's a wide area. It also gives us the opportunity to look at access to Loop 303 through a larger area, which turned out to be an important factor in this study. The purpose for this and the objectives for this study are very simply stated. We want to identify where transportation improvements are needed and when they will be needed. A little bit of background. The stakeholders, the partners that we've been working with include the cities of Surprise and Peoria, Maricopa County Department of Transportation, Arizona Departments of Transportation and State Land, and we've also included the BNSF Railway. And in anticipation of a question that might be answered at the end of this, yes, we are assuming that the intermodal facility in this area is a part of our assumption to be sure that whatever recommendations come out of this study will be appropriate if in fact that project is developed. There is one thing though that we're not looking into, and that is whether or not any new roads crossing the railroad tracks should be elevated. We just feel this is not the proper venue to have that discussion. There are other venues underway now and will be in the future where there are opportunities for that conversation. As I mentioned, it's been almost a year and a half since this project started. We had an in-person open house in August of last year. We had a virtual public meeting in March of this year. And we came up with a number of possible solutions to the problems that they discovered. And we're here today to update you on this, but also let you know that we'll be coming back to the committees at MEG for acceptance of our final report sometime early next year. We have one final in-person open house coming up on November 13th. Talking about the open houses, the first one was in 2024 in August. It was well attended. We had great conversations with people who were there, and we gave them an opportunity to give us their ideas and priorities. And it was very clear. The first was there's a problem in traffic congestion that has to be dealt with right now. And then access and safety were equally important going forward as well. So let's look at the key findings that came from the analysis. The first key finding is that this area is growing very, very rapidly. Between 2020 and 2050, the population is going to grow by a factor of 6.5. And to help visualize what that looks like, we have these dot maps, and each gold dot that you see represents 15 people. So 100 dots is 1,500 people, 1,000 dots is 15,000 people. And between 2020 and 2030, you can see there's a lot of dots that occur just north of the 303. And in fact, that density is already looking like the density on the south side of the 303. And as time goes on, it gets more and more dense. So we certainly can see why we're beginning to see congestion even now. And to be able to visualize that congestion, we're looking at US 60 here from the top of the 303 interchange. And we're looking straight west, so we can see the northwest passage of US 60 going up to the intersection at 163rd Avenue, which is about 2/3 of a mile away. And here you can see that traffic is backing all the way up into the interchange and beyond. And the interesting thing is, if you look a little further away, you can see that traffic is also backing up even longer on 163rd Avenue and has even longer delays. So this is a significant issue that is existing at the moment. The question is, why is this so congested when all the area around it seems to be working so well? And to answer that question, we had to look more broadly at what was happening. What you see here on the right is we have 6 interchanges along the 303 going from Bell Road to Lone Mountain Road. Well, it's actually 5.5 interchanges, because the one in the middle at El Mirage only goes to the south, and you can't get to it from the north side, which is our study area. And what that means is we have a section of 9 miles long where there's only one interchange that people can use. So what happens if people need to get into the Central Valley or to use Loop 303? They really have only one choice. And that's the reason why this is such a problem today. What about in the future? What's going to happen in the future? Is this problem going to continue? Well, what we have here, we're looking at 2050 when there may be more interchanges. You see the 3 green interchanges on the left. They're on the west side. By 2050, they'll be serving nearly 300,000 vehicles a day coming from this study area to the 303. The 5 on the east side will carry about just a little over 150,000. So what this shows us that the interchanges on the west are roughly double the amount of carry, about roughly double. And in fact, the interchange at Grand Avenue and the 303 is over 160,000 people, vehicles, which is more than all of the east side interchanges will serve added together. So these west interchanges are a much bigger challenge for us to solve. The next finding that we did is we took a look at the general plan road system for the entire area and asked the question, what if all of these general plan roads were built to their full width? So a typical major arterial would be 3 lanes in each direction with a left turn lane in the middle. If that was provided in the entire general plan, how would it function? And so we took a look at that for the year 2050, put it in our model, and we learned a number of things. The first is that a lot of these roads would be underutilized. What you're seeing in green are the roads that don't require the full width that's in the general plan. Maybe they only need 2 lanes in each direction. Maybe they only need 1. Some of these roads won't even be needed by the year 2050. They'll be needed someday, but we need to figure out what's needed within the time frame that we're looking into. There are a number of streets that do require full general plan width, which are the ones you see here in blue. Those seem to be mostly located over in the east side in the Peoria area. And then, of course, we do have some that require even more than what is planned in the general plans. And the 2 roads that jump out at us is, first of all, US 60 Grand Avenue and also Bell Road. Now, US 60, there are no plans currently to widen or improve Grand Avenue at this time. So any improvement would show up as a red line on this map. And we know near the 303, those improvements are significant. But it's interesting to see that Bell Road is also growing very rapidly. In fact, you'll see that the red line is darker way down at the bottom. And the reason for that is by 2050, Bell Road will be carrying more traffic than any arterial street in the valley carries today, and will require more lanes than any arterial has in the valley today. So that's, and plus, that's an arterial street. It's not eligible for funding under Prop 479 and our freeway life cycle program. So other ways have to be looked into to find out how to deal with this problem. So basically what this tells us is we need to be very strategic in how we plan and finance improvements that are going on. We want to only provide those improvements that are really necessary, but then deliver them in time so that we don't have congestion problems arriving over time. And that takes us back to the purpose of this study, which again is very simply stated. Where are those transportations needed and when are they needed? So it's not saying, will they be financed? It's just saying, where do we need to make improvements in order to avoid future congestion problem? At this point in our analysis, we had our second public meeting, and this was attended by about 250 people. This was a virtual meeting, and they took the opportunity to respond. We gave them dozens of different scenarios of things we might do to solve these problems or the congestion that might occur in the future. And on an average basis, each person who responded actually said something to us 22 times on various questions, opportunities for comment or agreement or disagreement. So they took this seriously. They spent a lot of time and put a lot of effort into giving us their thoughts. And very, very high level summary of those were we need to fix access to the 303 and we need to improve access to US 60. So from that, we were able to start forming recommendations. I'm going to go through a few of those now in fairly general terms. The first one is we have to fix the problem at US 60 and the 303. Well, that's a complicated problem that needs a lot of work. And 3 steps are in this process. It's already begun. The first step is to implement small improvements where there's an opportunity to do that. That's underway. The second step is to build a new interchange close to Grand Avenue so that there's an alternative. People will have another route to take as things continue to get worse over time. And once those 2 things are done, then we can seriously look at what needs to happen on US 60 in this area to solve it. So I'll look at those briefly with you one at a time. Implementing small improvements. This has been going on for about a year. We have maybe 6 or 8 months more before they're all completed. And you can see with the yellow and the blue lines, the number of additional lanes have been added to the various intersections in this area. The next step is to build a new interchange. ADOT has done a project assessment and it's determined the best place to put this interchange is going to be connecting with 155th Avenue. And you can see here in the map, you can see in the left-hand corner, you can see where the existing Grand Avenue interchange is. This is about a mile to the northeast of that point. And this is, I'm sure, a very strange looking interchange. It's not like anything else we have here. There are 2 reasons for that. The first reason is that it can't go to the south. All of the land south of this location is fully built out and occupied. So this can only go to the north. But on the north side, there are a series of high power electric transmission lines parallel to and very close to the freeway. So the only way to get through there is to get back on the ground and go underneath. So we have to take all the ramps, bring them together on the ground at a signalized intersection right close to the freeway. And it ends up looking like this. Now, with these 2 things done, we'll be able to make major upgrades. And there are 2 locations. The green circles show the one in the bottom is the interchange of US 60 and Loop 303. The one above that is the intersection of 163rd Avenue and US 60. Now, at the interchange, we're proposing an elevated intersection on top of the freeway at this point. And that will help separate traffic, heavy movements of traffic, some up above and some down below. At the 163rd Avenue intersection, it's the same thing. We want an elevated intersection there. So again, we can separate traffic. And by doing that, you'll also see on the bottom right here that we're elevated over the railroad tracks at the same time. So there won't be any conflict between trains and cars. These 2 improvements, in order to separate traffic the way is needed, they have to be fully integrated, which means they have to be designed together and implemented together. And a few examples of how we're able to separate traffic. If you're traveling, which would be southeast bound on US 60, and you want to go to southbound 303, you can get off on a separate ramp. It stays on the ground and doesn't have any signals. You go all the way without stopping right onto the 303. And if you're coming from southbound 163rd Avenue, you have only one intersection, but remember that's elevated above Grand Avenue, so there's no Grand Avenue traffic on it. And then take it all the way through. And if you're coming the other way, if you're coming up the 303 or on westbound Grand Avenue, you stop and have an intersection just for those 2 movements that are going to 163rd Avenue, and they continue without stopping. So by separating traffic this way, we're able to manage the traffic and have everything moving. So the status on all of this is the small improvements are nearly finished. Building the 155th Avenue, we already have advertised for design. Design will begin early next year. And it's programmed for construction in 2028. Building the major upgrades will also start in design in 2026. They're programmed for construction in phase 2 of Prop 479. The next area is access to other Loop 303 interchanges. And we've seen already from the map with the red lines where those improvements need to be made. Now, for access to Grand Avenue, we really, because things are changing so much, we need to put a plan together, an access management plan. And that begins by identifying opportunities to cross Grand Avenue with arterial streets. And we found 8 locations where that can happen. All of these aren't going to be needed by 2050 probably, but they need to be protected. These need to be available when they're needed. This is an 18-mile corridor. We have 8. That's an average of more than 2 miles between all of these junctions. They need to be protected and plans should be made to use them. I told you earlier that with the dot, I was going to come back to the dot map that showed where development is. And that's what we're looking at here. So you can see the box on the left is now seen in the dot map. you can see Loop 303 goes through the middle, and you can compare in 2050 what the density of development is north of the 303 to the density south of 303. Now what I want to do is compare a new box, what that looks like on the ground today, and it looks like this. Okay, so what you see in the blue box on the right, this is what Google Earth tells us it looks like. So this is a level of development. This will be equal to or greater than that north of the 303. So what do we expect with this level of density? There will be frequent signalized intersections. There will be unsignalized driveways to restaurants and medical facilities and businesses, and there will be reduced speed limits in that area. On the north side, it's a much different issue, and it's primarily a safety issue. All the red dots that you see here are locations where there exists today an unsignalized access onto US 60. And with the amount of traffic that's growing, every single one of these dots is going to need some safety attention by the year 2050, whether that's a signal or some other kind of measure to make it safer. It's just the number of cars and the number of heavy trucks, which is growing very rapidly. It's going to make it essential that these have some kind of safety measure. Otherwise, it's going to become very unsafe just to get on and off of Grand Avenue. So really, this access management plan is a focus on how to make it safer over time. In summary, remember there were those three objectives, three priorities. The first one was fixing the existing problem, improving access, and improving safety. So we have measures here that address all of those, including the access management plan, which is primarily a safety plan. One last reminder, we have another public meeting on November 13th, and we'll be coming back early next year with our final report seeking your acceptance. So thank you very much for the opportunity to share this update with you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Good.
Thank you so much, Chair. Thank you, Bradley, for the comprehensive presentation. I did want to track back just a little bit because I think it was on your slide 69 in regards to how you're going to have some overpasses over the rail, and we'll be able to work in some of that. But you didn't want to talk too much about doing anything around the rail and covering those because is that because it's in the city of Surprise, and so Surprise would have to look towards that funding in partnership with BNSF? Is that correct?
Thank you, Chair Wires, members of the committee, and thank you for your question. The reason we're not addressing it is that it's not a simple issue. There's not a lot of money available. Somebody has to pay for all of those grade separations. I don't think it's appropriate for this study to make a judgment on who should pay for what. I think there are other venues where those conversations are already being held and will continue to be held for many years. So we're leaving that to those other venues to address rather than trying to tackle it ourselves.
Very brilliant. Thank you so much for that clarification. Are we able to, in the study, determine if those overpasses that you have put in the plan that will be covered under this jurisdiction, are we able to look and see if we can get the federal funding for the railway safety projects? Because those look like they would be those rail safety crossing, and they do provide, I think, from some of those grants, research and actual build funding. Is that an opportunity?
Mr. Chairman, Councilmember White, I'll jump in on that one. When it comes to federal grants and pursuit of federal grants, we have a very deliberate strategy. In fact, this region's been successful with securing a federal grant at US 60 Indian School. And so certainly that will be part of our calculus. I think as we look at opportunities for federal grants, we determine the highest and best project to compete for those funds. Because at the end of the day, if we're able to secure federal funding to help offset some of the cost of 163rd or 303 US 60, it benefits the entirety of the region. And so certainly these could be prime candidates, but we'll undertake that analysis.
All right. Thank you. Oh, Okay, I didn't see you.
Sorry, I apologize.
Been a while, Spencer.
Mayor, thanks for the presentation. That was a lot of good information, and I deeply appreciate your calmness in the presentation because as you talked, my anxiety level went up dramatically. So I, for what it's worth, I think your growth projections, are very accurate and maybe underestimated. This arguably could be the fastest growing area in the valley as it relates to residential construction over the next, 15 to 20 years because of water issues and a variety of other factors. And so your attention to this is deeply appreciated from my industry's perspective. But I can't, I just wanted to say that I don't think we could build these improvements fast enough. I know funding's always a challenge. Schedules are always a challenge. The legwork that goes into putting a project in the ground is always a challenge. But we're about to see some explosive potential traffic out in this area, in addition to the numbers that you showed. And congestion is the number one factor out there for everybody. And you obviously showed that through the picture. So, I just, as we move forward on this, I just think it's imperative to get these projects online as fast as possible. Easier said than done. And I understand that, but it is literally a crisis out there right now.
Sound like Spencer just said the home builders are going to pay for grade separation. That's what I heard.
I heard it in the presentation.
All right. Is that it? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Proceeding on to item number 9, Arizona Sun Cloud statewide implementation. I can't say that word. And innovations aid to grant project. Brian?
Excuse me. Thank you very much, Chair Wires, members of Transportation Policy Committee. It's a pleasure to be here with you this afternoon to give an update on the Arizona Sun Cloud statewide implementation and innovations grant project. To provide a bit of background on what the Sun Cloud is, back in 2017, ADOT, MAG, and its numerous partners were awarded $1 million to develop a data portal to increase and improve the accessibility, usability, and quality of data and analytical tools. The goal of the project was to create a better understanding of needs in the corridor and align policies and strategic investments. And the Sun Corridor data portal and planning tool was what was born out of this project. For the original rollout of the project, we were focused primarily on the 5-county region in southern and central Arizona that we refer to as the Sun Corridor. This includes the counties of Maricopa, Pinal, Pima, Santa Cruz, and Cochise. Counties here cover a bit more than 30,000 square miles of land and house somewhere in the neighborhood of 85% of the state's population. We brought together a robust team of stakeholders that included all of the metropolitan planning organizations and councils of government in the region, and as well as county agencies and our partners at ADOT and FHWA. So I want to touch on briefly what makes the Sun Cloud data portal unique. First of all of the data that we have included on the platform is publicly available. That means members of your staff, your jurisdiction, the consultant community can all log onto this website and download and interact all of the data that's available. None of it's proprietary. None of it is behind a black wall or a black box. It's all out there and usable. And then the other innovative thing we did here was the way that we collected the data was very regional in scale, and we paid a lot of attention deliberately to the standardization of the data collection process so that when we were creating these data sets for a large geographic area, they would be comparable between areas. In total, we created 22 separate data layers that can be utilized in the Sun Cloud data portal. I did, however, want to focus on 2 of the more innovative layers that we did develop. First, I would like to touch on safety. Typically, when we've been evaluating safety in this region, largely we'll look at crash rates, rates of serious injuries or fatalities, non-motorized injuries, so on and so forth. And while that can give us a really good idea of where crashes are existing, it doesn't necessarily give us the predictive ability to tell where impact will be most readily realized when we are creating a safety improvement project. So through a combination of consulting the Highway Safety Manual, bringing in together AEDTs on these roadways, we've actually been able to come up with a metric that instead of just showing us how many crashes they are, we're identifying areas where there's an actual high potential for reduction of crashes based on the geometry of the intersection, based on the volume going through the intersection. So rather than just seeing where the crashes are occurring, you can log on to this map and see those areas that are highlighted where we've identified the most potential for reducing crashes in that area. Another layer that I would like to discuss is pavement roughness. Specifically arterial pavement roughness. I know this item has been brought through this committee in the past, but I think it's important to reiterate when collecting data, there are many ways to measure pavement quality. Some agencies are out with a specialized LiDAR truck collecting very detailed information on rutting, cracking, and so on and so forth. Other agencies have less availability to these technologies sometimes, where we might just be getting a good, fair, poor, or some other disparate rating system. It was difficult for us to bring together a regional pavement condition layer just in the MAG region. So when we were looking to expand out geographically, we realized that we had to kind of find a different solution. So we've contracted with a company called Naira Dynamics and their road health system. And what this actually does is collect International Roughness Index, which is not the end-all be-all of pavement condition, but it is a standardized metric that is collected evenly, and it is reporting near data only, near-term data as well. We're able to limit the data that is used for this analysis to just within the past year. And because this technology utilizes connected vehicle data, we are able to tap into a much larger subset of data to be able to find out these facility, basically pavement condition evaluations for far out arterial roadways that we might not otherwise have had data for. So beyond the data itself that's housed in the tool, we did bring in some analysis and tools that you can do to drill down into the data a little bit further. Regarding analysis, we built in some creature comforts that will allow you to symbolize multiple attributes differently, to filter by certain attributes or physical geography. You can also go ahead and print display maps that you create or export any of this data into your software of choice. Additionally, we built in a custom scoring metric. When developing the portal, we did create an overall scored network layer where we used a weighting system that we recognize is not suitable for all areas. Everybody's priorities are a little bit different, but we want to kind of have a baseline so you could see what was going on. We also built in the ability to refine this weighting so that you can enhance your view on what your individual priorities are as an organization. This can be especially useful when pulling information for grant applications or things like that, where you're trying to just get data and get it into something quickly and easily. So what comes next? ADOT and MAG have been awarded a second $1 million federal aid grant to expand this product statewide. So what we'll be doing is taking our existing 22 data layers that we've created, we'll be updating those, and we'll be expanding them to the entirety of the state. No longer will we be focusing solely on that 5-county Sun Corridor region. We'll be updating all of the data probably 2 times, but we will have an update schedule prepared as part of this plan as well. And we'll also be creating 3 additional statewide data layers with respect to bicycle pedestrian volumes, asset degradation, and facility resilience. We are currently in the final stages of executing our grant agreement with FHWA. I'm expecting word on that anytime now, and I've got an RFP on my desk waiting to hit the street the second the funds have become obligated. If anyone would like to see a little bit more information, I've created a few QR codes so you can quickly access our SunCloud website, a 75-minute training video that goes through all of the tools on the site itself. And if you're really interested, we've also got the code repository publicly hosted as well. So you can dig in and see the code that makes our product work. Chair, members of TPC, that concludes my presentation today. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Brian. Questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item, number 10. Legislative update, anything? Nada? Okay. Item number 11, are there any requests from the membership for any items that you'd like to have on a future agenda?
Mr. Chairman.
Here, go ahead.
You know, I've gotten some calls on the alignment for the light rail down on the around the Capitol. Is it possible just to get a presentation on what's going on about that?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Camps, members of the TPC, that issue is underway now. Valley Metro is handling that. When we have additional information available, we can certainly present on that at the right time.
I appreciate, but I'm not trying to push the issue, but is it possible to get an understanding of what's the discussions are? Because it seems kind of unique that I'm getting calls.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, members of the TPC, so that's a Prop 400 funded project. So Valley Metro is the implementing agency is handling that. So we want to be careful not to sort of cross over agenda items. I'd be more than happy to follow up with you, and certainly when appropriate, we can have a discussion here.
We could also just offer you an individual briefing on what we know at the moment. If you want to get before the next meeting scheduled, we can sit down with you, Spencer, and tell you what we know, or bring the right people from Valley Metro to do that. Yeah, sure thing.
Okay, next item is number 12. Are there any comments from the committee? Well, I do have one comment that I'd like to make, and basically, if you're available October 25th, which is Saturday morning at 10 a.m. At the Arizona State Capitol on the east side of the building between the House and Senate building, at the Veterans Memorial, which is where the 3 flagpoles are. I will be raising an American flag that was handmade in Phoenix at American Flag and Pole for me 7 years ago, and I've been taking that flag across the United States. It literally has flown over the Capitol at 49 state capitals in the United States, along with Puerto Rico. It's been at the U.S. Capitol. It's been inside the White House. And actually, I got into a tug of war with the President of the United States with this flag inside the White House. Swear to God, true story. True story. But this Saturday, the 25th at 10 a.m., the whole idea is to fly over Arizona's capital, which would be the 50th state. And it's in recognition of the veterans that have given us the freedoms to do what we're doing right this minute, be able to sit here and openly talk, open forums. It's for veterans that represent all 50 stars when they enlist in the service, not just 1 star. But more importantly, it's trying to get, and I think everybody in this room probably would agree with me, our country's been so divided this last several years. This isn't a Democrat or Republican or an independent flag, it's an American flag. And when 85% of the people in the middle start understanding that we're all Americans before we do anything else, I think that's the most important thing. So I'm asking y'all, if you have the opportunity to come down, be part of this celebration. America's birthday is coming up here in 9 months for our 250th anniversary. So love to have you. We're going to try to make a really special event out of it. My belief is that when we get this done, that we have a good chance of getting it at the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. So with that,
Could you repeat the date and time again, Mr. Chair?
Excuse me?
Could you repeat the date and time of that?
Yes, it's October 25th. It's 2025 this year. It starts at 10 a.m. And I couldn't tell you if we're going to have 5 people there or 5,000. I don't have a clue. I don't know. But if all of you invite people, and I think it's a good opportunity for the young kids, maybe to start kicking off America's 250th birthday, because that's coming up soon. And I think it's kind of a neat way to recognize our country and our freedoms. So if there's nothing else for the good of the order, I guess we're adjourned. Thank you.